and hang on a second.
And it crashed.
And
there we go.
There we go. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have two newcomers into the temple. They are the double-headed monster that is Shield Brothers Games, current designers of the Emergent RPG, which we'll be getting into tonight. In the red corner, we have Austin Nachbur, and in the blue corner, we have Daniel Staples. I'm not going to hit the
Thank you.
button. Oh. How are you two doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us.
Doing okay. It's an honor to be here. You know your stuff, so I'm excited to talk about my game with other enthusiasts.
Yeah. So this might be a bit of a deep cut, but which one of you is the Abbot and which one of you is the Costello?
The who in the Costello?
Abbot and Costello, i.e. the guys responsible for giving us who's on first.
Ah, yes. Okay, indeed. Gosh. Okay, I feel like I'm the Abbot and Daniel is the Costello.
Still going over my head, but Austin's always the voice to the people, I would say. Unless if he's otherwise indisposed, in which case.
Daniel has a great way of answering and responding to things, I'd say.
Yeah, that can work. So, one of the traditions around here is opening with the humble beginnings, in a sense. So, with that in mind, I'd like you to walk me through your introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
Yeah, just like playing them in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I had a friend named Ethan in middle school who showed me Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition, and I was hooked because it was a way to try to like transition the imaginary ruleless, basically LARP games of elementary school that I think a lot of us played into a real rule system that had some meat on it and still let me engage with that sort of imaginative side. And honestly, I was just hooked from there. I played like 2 games as a player and then became a DM and was a forever GM for, gosh, pretty much until college, when I finally met other people who I didn't have to introduce to RPGs and could run them for me. Since then, I've kind of moved on from D&D a little bit. I'll still play it occasionally for the most part. I'm playing a lot of the Paizo games, the 2 Pathfinder and Starfinder, play a lot of Lancer. I like exploring new indie systems and a lot of one-shots. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yep. If you ever feel like trolling somebody named John, have everyone play Everyone is John.
I have played Everyone is John. That's a great one. That's I played that in college times. Good times.
For me, I played a little bit of like D&D 4th edition and some Fate, stuff like that sporadically, but kind of just as a side thing. And then in high school, I read a lot of H.P. Lovecraft because I had a friend who wanted to run a Call of Cthulhu game. And we did a little bit of that, and pretty quickly, as I was looking at these rule sets, I was thinking, well, someone just sat down and wrote this. I could do that. So I wrote a lot. I wrote 2 games before I even really started playing them, just for fun. And then I got to college, met Austin, found out he was also had read a lot of Lovecraft. And he had put together a game that sort of incorporated its elements and was sort of like a celebration of the themes. And we kind of pitched back and forth the idea of playing it, and eventually we did. And I had fun with that, and really quickly, in a few days, wrote a sequel to it and ran that for him. And then we were like, this is kind of fun. What if we just made a bunch of these? And that never really went anywhere, but we went on to play more RPGs and more of our own stuff, kept making stuff until eventually we decided to collaborate. So that was sort of my journey with it.
I neglected to mention all the Call of Cthulhu we played in college. That was a lot. That was a big one.
Yeah, I've ended up making like 20 systems. Most of them don't even get played. I just make it, look at it, and then move on to the next thing. It's kind of a mental exercise.
Yeah, I can certainly get that, and it's the kind of thing that I've seen around. But
yeah.
So when it comes to Emergent, since you mentioned ideas that you had been kicking around, was it a case where this was one of those where it was just an idea that just needed a system, or is it the other way around when it comes to the chicken and the egg?
Yeah, it had an interesting development from sort of the pre-idea phase to eventually its proper conception. the power trees, which you can see a preview of on the itch.io page or whatever, just the sort of the numbers down in the shape of whatever the power does that give you your abilities, was something I played around with just as an aesthetic mechanic in some of my earliest projects, but then that really never went anywhere. But as we were mentioning, Call of Cthulhu, we wound up playing a couple Call of Cthulhu and Call of Cthulhu adjacent games in college where the players were college students. And we had a lot of fun with just that vibe and that setting. And one of the most memorable ones was during lockdown. We both graduated 2020. COVID happened. We all got kicked off of campus because of lockdowns and kind of lost that last half of our final semester. So this game where we were college students role-playing college students fighting an eldritch monster. This was actually one of Daniel's side systems called Nightlights. We just had a lot of fun with it. We really connected with our characters and with the vibe, and it felt like a really cool way to sort of reclaim the lost semester of college. And that kind of got Daniel and I both into the place of there's something here with these kids fighting monsters. We watched Stranger Things. That was a major thematic inspiration. Daniel, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically, we both realized we were kind of making the same game. It was, I mean, after having made several games like that, I do a lot of sort of person with superpowers versus eldritch horror, and just because I think either of those genres, person with abilities and eldritch horror, can mix really well with anything, so I just like to mix those two together. And Austin did sort of a Call of Cthulhu game with some other elements that took place in college, and then I did sort of the Nightlights for my own little homebrew one-off as kind of just a little treat that was not quite a fourth wall break, but got a little meta where it's, okay, now you're in college, and both of them had this, you have to investigate the monster, and the investigation actually matters for the end, but we're not sacrificing the pulpiness of it. And they both also had that there's kids that are out of their depth, but they sort of have a little more edge than anyone else, so they decide maybe they're the ones that are supposed to be stopping whatever they find out that's going on. And eventually we were talking about our projects, and Austin was like, you just want to make this game together. And we both, again, had already made our own games. We were like, yeah, let's just bring our stuff to the table and see what happens. Really just as something to run for our friends. And then we ended up putting enough work into it that we were like, all right, this is kind of all or nothing. Let's see what we can do with it. Let's go all in. So
yeah. It was a Discord call one night after we had both put in like 20 or 30 hours that week on top of our jobs, where we decided, hey, we're putting a little too much work into this for it to just be a fun project with friends. We might need, and we decided that night that we were going to go all the way, we were going to publish it, and make it more than just everything else we did, which was just a fun project for friends.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. So, with that in mind, and hold on, I need to move my mic a little bit closer. Really need to get a mic stand one of these days.
Oh, I know that problem.
So, if you don't mind, since you guys have brought up Call of Cthulhu quite a bit, which I certainly am no stranger to, especially given some of my friends in Japan. I'd like to play a little bit of a little bit of word association with games that are in that particular ballpark. You can tell me if it's something you're familiar with, it's something you read, something you played. Think of it as the geekiest Rorschach test you will ever take.
Okay. Okay.
I remember this from your streams. I'm ready.
Yeah. So, Trail of Cthulhu.
I don't know about you, Austin. I haven't played. I really like alternate Call of Cthulhu settings, and in fact, the idea for the Call of Cthulhu game takes place in college. A thing that Austin ran came from a conversation he and I had about how great it is that Call of Cthulhu does a lot of time periods with full character sheets and everything. So, haven't actually played, but I've got a Horror on the Orient Express, but it's on my list as far as Eldritch horror westerns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm familiar with it.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, same. Haven't played it. Definitely looked at it when I was designing that Call of Cthulhu game, which involved time travel and going through different times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not something I've played yet though, directly at least.
Yeah. Here's the other big one, Delta Green.
Gosh, I keep trying to play that at cons and keep not being able to. I want to so badly. It seems really cool.
Basically, same boat. Want to say that it's under my belt, but not yet. Not yet.
And one that's done a bit of system hopping over the years, Octoon Cthulhu.
I've not read that or played it. I have seen it on the shelves, but I haven't really done anything with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't played that one. I really like the way it looks. It's a cool design.
Yeah, Octoon Cthulhu started out in basic, then we got a version of it in Savage Worlds, and more recently we've gotten a version of it in 2D20.
Oh wow!
Much like how Delta Green it's been in basic and in, I believe, Fate. I have not played the Fate version, which is the Fall of Delta Green.
Yeah.
But shifting from that, Cthulhu by Gaslight.
Yes, also used in the creation of that time travel game, and was basically the conceit of the time travel game was that the characters would touch these artifacts that would put them back into the memories of their ancestors who had also faced this monster. And yes, Cthulhu by Gaslight was one of those one of the systems I used for one of the time periods.
Mm-hmm. Dreamlands.
That is an interesting one.
It's also an old one.
It is an old one. I keep going into it, and then it just makes me want to read all of the Dreamlands, the Dream Cycle again.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back and I read it, and I haven't been able to pitch or play a game. It's a little obscure, more obscure than you're an investigator running from, aliens or whatever. But that's an interesting one. Can't say I've played though.
Yeah. This one is a bit of this one is stretching things a little, and I am biased because I've sat down with its developer twice. But are either of you familiar with Cthulhu Tech?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is that what you ran for the space one?
No.
Okay.
No. Cthulhu Tech is, and Mildred, I'm gonna butcher this, so you'll have to correct me, but it's actually more similar to Eldritch Automata. It's its own setting. It's outside of Call of Cthulhu, like Chaosium, and it's kind of more like Cthulhu End Times. It's sort of, there's this Eldritch Apocalypse. I believe they do use the Cthulhu mythos, but they also have like mecha adjacent technology based on like researching the Eldritch horrors, and it kind of has its own system. I believe that's also kind of an older one.
It's not that old. Not compared to, say, Dreamlands, which came out in '88.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Never mind.
Cthulhu Tech is a bit of a kitchen sink. The mecha part is there, though the recent second edition isn't focusing on that. That will happen later. and is more focused on the Shadow War aspect, which is more akin to anime like the Guyver.
Okay.
Maybe a bit of Silent Mobius if I wanted to really stretch things, but
Sure.
that kind of approach is what it's going for.
Sure.
And because at the end of the day, it is taking elements of the Cthulhu mythos and mixing them with elements of different anime,
Yeah.
which can work. I mean, we talked about it briefly, but Call of Cthulhu is very, very big in Japan. It is probably the biggest foreign TTRPG in Japan.
Yeah. I think it's bigger than D&D, isn't
Yes.
it? Or is
D&D
Oh,
has
wow, that's
never
awesome.
really gotten a major foothold in Japan. It's
Yeah.
gotten support. There was support in like Comtique magazine back in the 90s. But the problem is it's been a lot of stop and start. And
Sure.
it's kind of hard to build a following when you might go 2 or 3 years with absolutely nothing, and then you start getting stuff, and then it goes right back. And
Yeah.
you know how it goes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
But I'd say the other problem was, for the longest time, the only thing D&D related that was in Japanese was the red box. Was the Beckme era red box. It took significantly too long to get AD&D into Japan, and by that time, other games, especially in the fantasy subgenre, had already gotten a foothold. Stuff like Tunnels and Trolls, which was popular enough to get its own Japanese-only expansions.
Wow.
And of course, stuff like Earth Dawn especially, since Group SNE had a very fruitful partnership with FASA back then. And you would get these Japanese exclusive versions of Earth Dawn and Shadowrun that used the same rules at the time, but took a completely different approach to setting and to art style. And there was even a exclusive Shadowrun game on the Mega Drive, on the Mega CD, i.e. the Sega CD for the rest of us.
Oh, wow.
And it was actually one of the last Sega CD games to be officially made. Obviously, people can still make unofficial ones. But one of the things I was curious about is the approach that you guys are taking when it comes to the core mechanic. Now, as I understand it, and feel free to correct me on this kind of thing, this is a roll under variable dice setup where the dice is the difficulty.
That is correct.
You're trying to roll under your skill. The more difficult the task is, the higher the dice you're going to be rolling.
Yep.
Yes.
What prompted that kind of approach? Was it just wanting to use the whole list instead of the whole range of dice instead of focusing on just one?
So, should I take this one, Austin?
Yeah, go for it. I also have some thoughts on it, but I think you'll cover it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll have things that I don't, but that's a big bonus. You get to use all of your dice, but the process of how I got there was starting with D100, roll low percentile dice, which is great and all, and then I was like, hey, it's just a lot to distribute that many points if I'm running like a one shot and I just want to, throw some numbers on there and then go play. So I went to, okay, it's just a D10, roll low. Your skill will be anywhere from 5 to 9. 5, okay, 50-50 if it's not a skill you're great at. 9 is like I can almost always get this done. And then I liked the way that went. It was just very fluid. It's easy to roll low, and then you count successes, and you've got a lot of mechanical support right there for whatever you're trying to do. Went up to D12 because I wanted to give room to level up a little bit more, so you could get your skill up to, and instead of 10% increments, it's 8% increments roughly. Mm-hmm. So you can get a little bit higher. Okay, my skill's a 9. I've got 75%. Let's go up to, I can get 10. If I get 11, then I'm like really likely to do it. For this game, we're trying to debate what where we're gonna go with it. But the thing is, leveling up, even if you have a D12, you've got to start off with your skills at least a 7, or again, it's just a 50-50 chance with everything.
Mm-hmm. At least the skills you're good at. Yeah.
The skills you're good at. So, and that's if we were to do a D12 specifically, because you would want to go higher than that with the skill you're good at. You'd want to go like 9, 10, maybe. But then even then, you can level up that skill once or twice, and then you're maxed out. So, to give more room, we just said, what if we do... the dice can change, and your skills will start pretty low. The highest might be in middle of the ground, but the difficulty will change. So earlier on, you can do easier checks if it was a D6 and roll low. Most people are going to be able to handle that, assuming they have a balanced character, which is not always the case, of course. And then the middle of the ground stuff. That's exactly right. And then by the end, the harder stuff, even if you really max out your skill, it's a D6, it's a D8, my skill's a 9, I'll have no problem with those. We just move it up a little bit. Yes, you can auto-succeed those things. You can even most likely crit. But if you... there's room to grow. You can always want more. You can increase your character's skills and still have something of a challenge with the harder stuff. So
yeah,
it kind of came from roll low, static, and we added in the variable to give more room for character leveling, essentially. Austin?
Yeah, the ability to automatically pass stuff was honestly a really good and neat part of it, because it makes higher level play feel like you've been doing this a while. If your character gets to the point where the stuff that was really challenging at the beginning of the game, when they didn't really know what monsters were or how to fight them, now they can do all of that stuff without really thinking about it, and you can feel that progression of, okay, I'm guaranteed to do a lot of this easier stuff, but since we're facing stronger foes and tougher challenges, there's still something to challenge me, to make that progression worthwhile. So we kind of got the best of the roll low system without some of its... In our mind, we solved some of the awkwardness with regards to character creation and leveling progression.
Yeah, and I've had some people romanticize the freeformness when it comes to full-on skill systems. And I'm not slamming anybody, but I do think when people say, oh, you can build any kind of setup with games that use those skill systems, I often have to remind them about the fine print. In the same way that I have to remind GURPS stands about the fine print when it comes to their game, when it comes to that game. Because I got nothing against GURPS, but I will pick on the folks who keep saying, oh, you can use GURPS to run anything, which is technically true, in the same way that in the same way that you're technically correct if your niece, say, asks for a Disney princess doll and you give them a Princess Leia figure. Technically you're correct, but you kind of miss the point.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's the fact that that in that kind of system you're gonna have to do a whole lot of work because there's a whole lot of traps. And when it comes to attribute and skill systems, putting aside the god-awfully large skill list I was seeing back in the 90s.
Yeah, like a Call of Cthulhu length skill list.
Call of Cthulhu is not even the worst.
Oh wow.
Rifts, as one of the many reasons that Rifts is my whipping boy, is the skill list in that one that is downright offensive, as well as every single Fantasy Games Unlimited game that I've ever played or run and Phoenix Command, and subsequently the first attempt at doing Aliens in tabletop form with the Aliens Adventure game, which I have repeatedly said I will never run that again unless I am paid, and none of you can afford it.
Sure.
If I'm going to be dealing with that kind of thing again, I'm going to be asking for 6 figures as hazard pay.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
Look, in the 90s, a lot of developers had this massive boner for trying to create the most realistic simulation-y system that they could. And a lot of those games do not hold up with age.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the moving away. You know, I can get behind an interesting simulation, but I'm glad we've kind of moved away from that in the space for the most part.
Yeah, I will admit part of my aversion to hyper simulation is my time with the biggest board game that I will ever play in my life, and I will never play again, and that is the Campaign for North Africa.
Wow, you've actually played it?
Yeah, and that's how the fight started.
Amazing.
We got close to finishing it, and then a disagreement started, and then hands started getting thrown.
Wow.
And it only stopped because I acted as the person breaking up the fight, since nobody's gonna want to throw hands when you've got somebody taller than everybody else.
And that's why you're the monk.
Yeah, I'd like to say that was the first time I had to do that kind of thing, but that would not be true. But
yeah, mediator role.
Yeah, well, there was that, and I did, and once upon a time I did small time hockey when I was in high school, and
okay.
Of course, my job was enforcer, so I was told, "Hey, you see that guy with the puck over there?" "Yes, I do, sir." "I don't want to. Fix that." "Okay." Look, if he doesn't know how to dodge, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
But
that's the game.
Yeah, you knew what you were signing up for. But I think what's interesting here is that with a lot of attribute and skill systems, it is done on a XP as currency approach. You know, you get XP from showing up and all that stuff, and you spend that directly, instead of an outright leveling setup, which is what you guys have.
Indeed.
Was there a point where it was XP as currency and it shifted to level up, or was it always level up?
There was a discussion about that, but at no point was the game ever not level, and the reason for that was the initial design aesthetic. I brought up the power trees, and this is the first thing we kind of did with the game at all, was come up with some cool, interesting superpowers and give them power trees. And the power trees originally had 12, now have 15 nodes or abilities that you can get on them, and it was a lot of fun to make them in the shape of the power. Like polarity is in the shape of a lightning bolt, and you can go down the lightning bolt, different parts of the lightning bolt to get different abilities. Or Floralist in the shape of a tree, and Psyche's in the shape of a brain. That was a lot of fun to do, and that kind of locked us into a level system from the get-go. There are 15 nodes, you get 1 node every level. It wouldn't have really worked to do a XP as currency system for that. I do like that as a game mechanic. I do like XP as a game mechanic, but specifically when we're trying to where we started, it was never really an option unless we were going to have 2 parallel level up systems, which would have been awkward, probably.
Unless those level up systems end up focusing on different things, it would have been awkward, and it would have been a case of over engineering, which I've worked with my fair share of engineers. That is the one thing you don't want. You don't want that many cooks in the kitchen, as it were.
And we have quite a few cooks in our kitchen already, specifically with the core game loop. So yeah, trying to cut complexity in other places is good.
Yeah. Again, that was the problem with a lot of those games that are my whipping boys from the 90s. It was that that mindset was complexity good.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen some people take.
Indeed, it was.
I've seen some people take the opposite approach of rule complexity bad, simplicity good, which I may as well add in ooga booga because it's a very simplistic way of looking at it.
Right.
Since at the end of the day, it's a pendulum, and whether you swing too far to the left or too far to the right, the problem is you swung too far.
Exactly. I think we in our thought process, we tried to add complexity where it mattered and simplicity where it didn't was our hope in what we did. I guess it's up to the players how well we succeed at that, but there are certain parts of the game that are definitely complex, crunchy, and heavy, and then other parts that are
Mm-hmm. And since we brought up powers earlier, I'd like to talk on that, since powers is one of those things that can be tricky. Speaking as someone who's run a dozen or so different supers games where figuring out the right approach when it comes to powers can become a bit messy. Not impossible, but messy. What was the design goal you had with the power system that you guys use?
So, well, Austin, do you want to take this? I've got thoughts, but this is originally your department.
I can start with it. Yeah, originally, and this is sort of just an artifact of built, is we started with those trees, which we both thought was a cool little aesthetic mechanic system. So what that kind of locked us into before game design even really started was quote unquote pre-built powers, not like a what's the most recent Marvel game? Daniel, you showed this to me, where you can kind of piecemeal your powers from a bunch of different type. Yeah.
Yep. Multiverse.
We were
multiverse.
Yeah, I never wound up playing it, so I don't want to judge it, but just from rating it, yeah, I feel similarly. But yeah, we were from the get-go. These are distinct, discrete powers. You have polarity, which is the electricity-based power. Now, within those, we tried to make each node, each ability, as multi-purpose and creatively usable as possible. So while there are, of course, your cool big attacks, because everyone loves a cool big attack, polarity has its lightning bolt, which is a pretty straightforward, hits a bunch of things with a big electric damage. What polarity starts out with is you can choose an electronic device within range that you can see, and you can turn it off or you can turn it on, and that's the power, which doesn't feel like a lot, but it pretty puts the onus on the player to decide how to creatively use that to solve their problems. You could make a car start remotely or turn it off remotely if you're trying to chase it down, for example. You could pull the fire alarm at your school to evacuate everyone if you know a monster's attacking without having to get out of your chair and ask to use the bathroom. You could turn lights on or off, on being an excellent weapon against monsters that are light sensitive, for example. We tried to follow that sort of design principle with all of the powers, that almost all of their nodes, or maybe not almost, let's say 70% of their would be not directly combat focused and would be creatively interpretable. Obviously, most of them can have combat applications. Turning on a light against a monster that is light sensitive is a combat application but not combat on the face of it of here's an ability that rolls some dice as damage. That was the initial design philosophy, to try and thread the needle of powers, where people have their own visions for powers, but it's also really difficult to create a balanced system that lets you create any power.
Yeah.
Daniel, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, and so I've done plenty of the pick from this list, piece your ability together, play it. I've played plenty of those. I've done the negotiate with the GM. Here's some broad terms of how to construct your own power that you want to envision. It's fine. There's two reasons why we would go more for this. One is, while it is really fun to just make whatever you want and then play it, you can kind of get into, and I'll try to speak to this part because this part's more important. You can kind of get a convergence of, D&D runs into this. You get 12 classes, 12 different ways to roll 2 more d6s of damage. Flavor it 12 different ways. It's not quite like that, but yeah, basically, you can start to get like, okay, here's the guidelines. Flavor these guidelines different ways, but everybody's just running the same guidelines.
All roads lead.
And there's ways to fix that, but the nice thing about a modular game, when there's set things, maybe you can't do the specific thing you're dreaming of or the specific character you're copying from your favorite show, but you can like, oh, this is a cool ability that interacts with these 3 other things, and not everybody's into that, but a lot are. That turns into kind of a game of itself, modularly building things. Second and bigger reason, I think, is originally Emergent was a game about it's kind of that investigation first thing. You were a character with a really minor ability, like Austin was just describing. So what we wanted, our original vision is, you get this ability that is absolutely a superpower, absolutely supernatural, absolutely gives you an edge, but it's just a little edge. That's it. It's a little thing, and then we would build a bunch of mysteries, a bunch of monsters that you have to solve around that little edge. And instead of, here's this big thing, build any power you want, really it's, you have a power, and that's really the main part of it, but that alongside with there being a monster, you always have a little edge. And if you're get to the end of the game, we did add, okay, you can upgrade it a bunch, you can get to level 15, your power is a lot more formidable then. It's always not enough to kill the monster, so really it's a list of with the expansion, 40 powers, 40 little edges, little face-ups you can get to ultimately solve the monster, mystery, investigation, combat, whatever, solve the problem in a investigative capacity where the powers are always helping you out but never totally carrying you. So we created things that we felt were thematic as weak powers but still cool, and then just made a bunch of those so that felt like you had a roster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what I find interesting about the setup is each one having its own rules in terms of what you can and can't do with it. It's essentially its own resource.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That operates differently depending on which one you're working with.
Yeah.
Was that kind of thing universal at one point, or was that also one of those things that was decided on early on?
No, there was never a universal what are now called limiters. The first powers we made, what we decided was, the powers have to be low key. They have to have a limit to how much you can use them, especially their fighting related abilities. So every time you make a power, come up with what limits your ability to use it, and potentially how you can overcome that limit at a different cost. A lot of powers can go above their resource limit by taking damage, or powers have a condition limiter, which you can use the power as much as you want, but the more you do, the more negative condition you're going to build up, and eventually you're just going to be helpless. And so, right out the gate, we made, I don't remember, however many powers before we formalized the limiter system, but every power is pretty much a different limiter. Eventually we realized there's a couple main categories, and or I think there's 7. There's resource, condition, environment, setup. Help me out here, Daniel.
Cool down.
Cool. Yeah. Refresh.
Environment.
I got. Yeah. Refresh, and then.
It doesn't really. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah.
There's a. We wanted them all to feel different. So. They've all got their different mechanics, but the hope was that it's not, oh, well, I've got the version of the lightning power, but it just lets me teleport. But it's the exact same thing, just a slightly different effect. It was like, okay, this feels like you have something different than this other player has. And, they couldn't understand how to use your power. It's just different. Now, a lot of them are, again, very similar. We mapped them all to set list of limiters. Austin was listing 6 or 7 or however many there are.
There's 6. I put them in the chat.
To make them feel balanced.
Mm-hmm.
But end of the day, out the gate, we wanted it to be, these are all kind of distinct, none are identical. They'll be similar, but it'll be, to each power, it's its own little microsystem.
Oh yeah,
and you can even see the differences within, because you have a traditional resource power like Apex. You get 1 surge every level.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have Impetus, which is the movement-based power, and your resource is something you build up and then spend over the course of a scene. The more you're moving, the more you keep moving, the more momentum you build up, and then you can spend that on feats of mobility. But it's not like you have a bunch at the start of the day and then you drain it throughout the day. You actually build it up and spend it over the course of each scene.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and in that regard, we've talked a bit about the player end of things. I think it's high time I talked about the monsters, since that's kind of the big attraction when it comes to the game. So I know when it comes to this sort of approach, there's usually that one monster that is largely the focus. So what steps have you guys taken to make sure that one monster can still be engaging with a whole party against it without it feeling like a kicking circle?
Oh yeah, we've thought about that quite a bit. Daniel, do you want to start this one, and I can fill in after? Or?
I don't know. I think we've both got a lot to say here.
Why don't you start out? Because I've started the last couple questions, and I can take it on after.
Okay, I'll do my best. The monsters, balancing them was just a whole thing. They are supposed to be that the way we made the mechanics, that each of these monsters, and this is sort of just at the cost of the GM, your recompense is that you've only got to run 1 at a time. But these stat blocks are just beasts. Every monster has so many abilities and actions and health and defenses, and they scale and all of these different things that if you full party, full resources, full health already, go after the monster, we have balanced the game that they will almost certainly lose. And I say almost certainly.
Crazy luck.
I say almost certainly because nothing's impossible. I had a party who was determined to be the only ones to win, and they couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. They could have maybe done it if they went all in and just TPK'd and crashed a car into the monster and then try to use their bodies as projectiles. Like it was that, like you can't do it. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of the game we wanted to build around sort of a super loose. It could be a lot more, it could be less, but sort of 3 encounter loop roughly, where first encounter you see the monster, second encounter you've learned a little bit about the monster and you have to fight it, but there's a secondary objective. Sometimes that's just throw as many different things as you can at it just to see what sticks.
You're more
and then get out of there
than confronting it.
Exactly. Or, to your point, there's a Joe Schmo at the store leaving his night shift, and you gotta hold it off for literally just long enough to snap him out of it and get him to run. And then there's the final fight where you've learned enough about the monster and you beat it. Mm-hmm. And to facilitate that, now the second encounter, that just fending it off, is kind of where the heart of the game lies, but you need that first encounter to make it scary. That's where the horror is, and the last encounter to make it satisfying. That's where you get your sort of payoff. But the game lies in that the monster, you can fight it, you can stand up to it, you can tell it no, but only for a second, because that's only if you've studied it a little bit. To facilitate that, each monster has so many weaknesses that if you know them all, it's more player facing. The monster will be so debuffed that it kind of just turns 180. It's never easy, but you only need a simple majority of the weaknesses to be able to beat it at all. And so that helps make the last encounter, the final encounter, when they all group together and turn it into a kicking circle, into kind of a kicking circle. You've been beaten up all week, you get to turn it around. And then to keep the first encounter, as you said, from not being a kicking circle, even if everyone goes in with their big super ultra punch power, which we've had happen, and they all try to circle it and beat it up, they just can't do it because, firstly, stat block is just, the numbers are just against them. And secondly, there are systems in place where if you see a monster for the first time, you have to make, similar to Call of Cthulhu, flat roll to not just sort of lose it. And then the monster gets flat buffs.
You have to deal with.
That you have to deal with, and you can only clear them by facing it subsequent times. And upon it getting those buffs, you can just freeze up or drop your weapon or whatever else. And just by the nature of the game, you have a lot of other stuff going on, so it's entirely possible that the monster will hit when you're suspicious that there's something out there, like maybe someone went missing, is this another monster, or what's going on here? But not necessarily armed to the teeth. You could be walking home from practice just by feature of the game taking place in high school when you've got other stuff going on. And then, giant infinipede comes and tries to swallow you, and all you can really do is run. And then it's sort of that game of, can you figure out the mystery, apply it, beat it in a week? I don't know. What do you think, Austin? I've been talking for a bit.
Yeah, I think Daniel got it really well. I can just put some specifics to the mechanics. How do we stop from being a kicking circle? Mostly through resistances. There are 10 damage types in the game, and they're important because a lot of the game is, well, maybe the monster's weak to heat, so let's go buy some propane tanks and blow them up and see what happens. The damage types are actually quite engaged in the mechanics of finding weaknesses, but that's neither here nor there. Monsters have a ton of weaknesses out the gate. Your basic weapons will be hitting for 5, maybe 9 damage if you're lucky, and they'll be ignoring almost all of that while you're not exploiting any of those weaknesses. So you're doing 1 or 2 points of damage a hit against a 3-digit.
Exactly.
Yeah, against a 3-digit stat block. Yeah, so it's just the time is not on your side. Yes, you can throw your superpower at it, but every power has a limiter. So if you're burning your super punch on a fully amped up monster that has all of its defenses up, you're losing so much potential. Versus using that super punch on a monster that you're exploiting weaknesses and its defenses are down, then you're getting the full payoff of your abilities. Numerically, it is just not really feasible to effectively damage the monster until you've discovered those weaknesses. And then, as Daniel said, it flips. Action economy also is something we did have to consider, because even with all of this, if we just gave the monster a fixed number of actions, it would still just get beat up by virtue of the fact the players are acting, 5 times more often. Monsters scale to the player count of the game. So their health and their actions per round scale with the player count. And that's, so if you have 5 players, it'll be a factor of 5 that's applied to the numbers on the character sheet. Which means if the monster attacks 3 players, it's still fighting at 5-player strength, and that's a really dangerous scenario. So the action economy does always balance itself out to the player count. which is definitely an issue when it's one monster versus a variable of players. We did build that into the system.
Yeah, because no matter how many no matter how many actions the monster gets, the combined action pool of a party is always going to be somewhat wider, just by virtue of, I guess you could call it accuracy by volume.
Sure.
Or,
The monsters always get a total number of actions equal to 1.5 times the player count. And each player gets 2 actions in a turn, so it basically amounts to the monster having 75% of the actions of the party.
Yep.
Always. And if one player is missing, then the monster has more actions than the players. So.
Now, with that in mind, when it comes to that setup, I did realize there's one particular. This might be a bit of a stretch, but there is one particular anime that I think might serve as an effective teaching tool for this kind of process. Are either of you familiar with an anime called Mononoke? Came out in the mid-2000s.
Not Princess Mononoke, the movie?
No.
Okay, then no.
I have not heard of it. Can you educate me?
Yeah. Mononoke is a spin-off of another series called Ayakashi Samurai Horror Tales, which was kind of a ensemble of a bunch of different stories. One of those stories involved a man who's only known as the Medicine Cell, who is this traveling exorcist of a sort, though there's a lot more unknown about him. However, the only way for him to exorcise the spirits that he focuses on, which are Mononoke, these spirits that have been corrupted by an excess of malice, is to know the form, truth, and regret of whatever he's dealing with. And and anytime he does have a confrontation without knowing those things, he is always fighting very defensively, usually using prayer strips and the like. Not meant to outright attack, but more block it, stall it, that kind of thing. Until he knows all three and can use a odd-looking sword called the Sword of Exorcism that he has.
Okay.
Yeah, that definitely feels like it, especially since if we're talking about that first encounter where you don't have the tools to damage the monster, your powers are still perfectly good for keeping yourself safe.
Yeah.
Or running.
Or, throw some 14 damage on it that does nothing, but gets its attention, so it's chasing you instead of the civilian. Which, problem later in 10 seconds, but fixes the problem now.
Yeah. Oh. And of course, you can always apply the rinse-win method of combat, which is running away.
Yes. Yep. Chase mechanics are massive because that is usually how your first and quite possibly second and third encounters are going to end, with a chase. So we have we think is a pretty fun chase system that keeps it quick, but also adds a little bit of structure to it.
For the weebs among you, this is also known as the Jonathan Joestar School of Combat.
Indeed, the secret tactic of running away.
Yep. Or for some of you, especially those who are afraid of flying cows, the Brave Sir Robin approach.
Yeah.
And I only bring that up because sitting on my shelf is the Monty Python RPG. That is not an RPG; it's a co-curricular medieval reenactment program, according to the
Yep.
Oh,
Monty Python. That is a.
Yeah, they made a side game called Fete la Vache. It is exactly what you think it is.
Wow.
But like I'd say making that as a shitpost, but the entire game is one giant shitpost, much like Monty Python was.
Sure. Yeah.
There you go.
But with that in mind, I know you do have a bestiary within the book, but Do you also have plans on putting in advice for people who want to make their own entries in a bestiary?
Oh, it's already there. We have a modular monster builder. It's like 60 pages long. You can build a monster from pieces.
Thank you.
It's a PDF. Yeah,
It's a PDF.
Yeah, thank you, because I am still to this day shocked that the idea of a monster creation system is somehow a revolutionary concept among some designers.
Yeah, that was something we wanted from the get-go, especially because the whole point of this, you know, the GM gets to create a character in a way. You're gonna be with this monster for a really long time. It's not like a D&D or Pathfinder where you as the GM are gonna go through half a dozen goblin orcs and whatnot. You get to get attached to this horrifying creature for weeks, for however long it takes the players to beat it. 3, 5, 8, 10 sessions.
Well, I've been bullying D&D and Pathfinder alike for sitting on their hands about monster creation. And
Yeah. So we wanted to make sure the DM got a chance to play around with it. Also, you know, can't control players looking at the bestiary, and the game is a mystery game. If you spoil yourself about a monster, you just can't run, because 90% of the gameplay isn't fighting the monster. It's figuring out the mystery. So we needed a tool to let GMs create their own mysteries.
That is a tricky thing when it comes to dealing with horror games. Because
Yes.
a large amount of people who play horror games are going to be some level of genre savvy.
Yeah.
In some form, in some rhyme, reason, function, form, or fashion. Try saying that 5 times fast. And when you have, you know, maybe they've watched a few slasher movies, maybe they've watched a few horror movies, maybe they've watched some of the old Universal classics, but there are certain motifs that are just inundated throughout pop culture. Like you're not going to put a vampire straight out, because people know too much about the weaknesses of vampires.
Exactly.
And
it was a dark and stormy night. Oh no, I am terrified. Yeah,
that's. I will admit the Dresden Files did a nice piss take on that, with the fact that the typical vampires, the Red Court, is all but extinct because everybody knows how to take them out. So it's been open season.
Well, that works out.
Yeah.
And I have a healthy respect for even though I haven't read through all of the books, I have a healthy respect for the Dresden Files, because its author is one of us, and when it came to doing his work in tabletop form, he was very hands-on with it. Which I always prefer having that to somebody who just hands the rights to somebody and then is hands off throughout the rest of it until something happens that they don't like, and then they cause a fuss. But a lot of the classic monsters have that kind of thing, and even some more Eldritch ones. There are recurring things that are they're in pop culture, and once that's in there, you're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah. And that's why with our monsters, obviously they have a lot of they follow a lot of the tropes vibe-wise of a lot of Eldritch horror, monster horror. But it's justified in the fiction that these monsters are coming from another dimension, and they're not actually coming from a material dimension. Becoming a material thing is a byproduct of them entering our universe. So their weaknesses are often nonsensical from a physics perspective. You could have a monster with a shell that blocks bullets be dissolved with simple salt water. So we're trying to get around the genre savvy. Obviously, genre savvy will help you with the general how do we go about investigating and fighting this thing, but it's not going to give you any hints into the weaknesses of the monster.
Yeah. It'll help you in the how to not die like an idiot.
Exactly. Or it'll tell you what you should do, what potentially foolish actions you should take to make the story keep moving forward, depending on how your relationship with your GM is.
Yeah. And when it comes when it comes to that, within the, what are your guys' plans for the future of Emergent?
Right now, we're finishing everything we promised in the Kickstarter. The last thing that's left to do is the module, which is going to be a level 1 to 2 module with kind of a quick start guide. It's a couple things in one. It is, yes, a pre-written module that gives you a lot of events and scenarios and NPCs and a monster you can fight through it. To kind of introduce you to the game. It's a quick start because it'll have pre-generated characters and kind of a tutorial encounter to introduce new players to the mechanics of the game. And it's a setting. It's going to be a relatively fleshed out setting with lots of NPCs and locations that are interesting that you could absolutely just use for a long-running campaign. You could run the module and then just keep running in that same setting with those same characters. Or you could ignore the actual monster and just grab the setting, because it'll be a relatively fleshed out rural American town that you can use.
Mm-hmm. Which certainly makes sense. Now, and I'm guessing with that sort of thing, that's meant to be the sandbox equivalent, not necessarily the equivalent of a hex crawl, but in that same kind of free form. There is no set end to the way it's supposed to work.
Specifically the module or the setting? What do you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe I understand. Like,
okay, yeah, go for it. Go ahead.
Well, so the module, it just opens up and then it gets you started, just like any, back of the book. Here's the starter adventure. Second to the module, we also have other PDF we're gonna release is like end game bosses that is just a couple of super powerful monsters with guidelines and a few stat blocks for like minions they'd send out and running them across the course of an entire campaign. Mm-hmm. And that is where you get your end of the line, because group of kids, powers fighting monsters. When does this end? Okay, stay away from the government. There's only really grim endings there, so that's where you kind of get to explore. Okay, maybe there's something causing this, and it comes to a head, and then you get your one broken, overpowered mechanic. Rest of the game, it would be a problem, and then you get your one super boss fight, one episode, one last monster, kind of to end the whole thing. Barring that, somewhere in the book GM section, I believe we've just got a little list. If you want to run a campaign, here is some overarching things. The monsters could just sort of be invading our reality. There's some logic as to why that would be. Or we've got I think it's like a D6 table maybe or something. Here's some examples of what could be causing the monster to come into your game. And you drop little hints, little side quests, etc. across the monsters. And there's a government facility nearby with a particle accelerator that's weakening.
Very Stranger Things-esque.
Dimensions, or there's this cult of evil wizards that's trying to summon some super monster and bind it to their will, and barrier opens a little bit every time. Or there's another group of emergents coming from whatever long time ago doing something, or there's this natural once every 100 years event where the barrier thins, and you research 100 years ago they also had a bunch of disappearances. You've got your basic guidelines to hit the setting, and then here down the line soon some possible end game mechanics,
where the mastermind is a creature from that other dimension that's been trying to invade our world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I can certainly get that, and I'd probably steal some notes from the Apocalypse trilogy for something like that, just with a better ending.
Sure.
And more specifically, the conceit from Prince of Darkness, where the recording was the whole time a recording from the future.
Okay.
I have not read that one, but I believe you.
Film. That was one of
Film. Watched.
The Apocalypse trilogy was three films that Carpenter did back in the day.
Mhm.
The most famous of that is The Thing.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen The Thing.
Yep. Then there was Prince of Darkness, and then In the Mouth of Madness.
Okay.
Which the latter two have their issues. Prince of Darkness feels kind of like a stopgap to what would be in the Mouth of Madness, and the lattermost one has some of the difficulties with trying to do cosmic horror in film, which is one of those things that it can be done, but there's a lot of traps. It is a bit of a minefield. Same with, say, time travel. I've spoken on that before. Even stories that I liked can sometimes struggle with time travel because it can inevitably fall under its own weight.
Yeah.
But now, with that in mind, I do want to sincerely thank both of you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens here. And
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking with us.
oh yeah, and anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. It's been an honor. A lot of fun talking about the game.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
soi 上洛が上長年